All right, first of all, welcome to Pack Expo. I think there's going to be some really good weather over the next couple of days, maybe a little bit of rain today. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Tim and the RPA to get the opportunity to present to you guys today. Orbis is definitely proud to be a member of that association, and hopefully you guys can take away a couple different nugget points on the automotive industry and some disruptors that are happening to that industry today. So feel free to ask questions as we go, and also ask questions at the end. So I'm going to first give you, in the first maybe 3 slides, I'm going to give you a little update. I was just in Detroit last week, a little bit of an update on automotive and kind of what's going on in the automotive sector today, because you're hearing a lot of different things out in the marketplace. So this graph is showing you the turnover rate of automobiles. So how many of the vehicles are being replaced in the marketplace. And you can see that this next year is still going to be a pretty good year, but we are highlighting 2021 right now with the number of vehicles that are being presented in the marketplace. It is definitely a down year. There's a little bit of that of cautiousness in the marketplace. There's also some OEMs that have turned over their fleets of vehicles, like Toyota has done a refreshing of their line, and now they're just producing the current vehicles they have. Other things that have been out in the news recently, Ford and General Motors are looking at issues from a recession standpoint. They both are definitely increasing their cash reserves. So if there is a blip that is going to be coming, the nice thing is that we've learned from the 2008-2009 blip, and I believe the economy will be much better because of that. It's not only automotive, heavy industrial, ag. We had a very wet season this year, so there are some implications on the ag as well. And also tariffs, right? You hear about tariffs that are happening on a daily basis, right? It's back and forth, but at the end of the day, it is increasing the cost and also the price to the consumers on those vehicles. This is a lot of detail on here, but this is what the model build schedule looks like for going into next year. So these are all the major vehicles that are being launched. That means that the content, the vehicle is going to look differently than the last vehicle that they launched. So the cadence for 19, the year that we're in right now, there's about 3.4 million vehicles that have been launched from a major standpoint. There's 9 OEMs presented, and of that, there were 20 major model builds. Looking at 2020, stepping into that, it looks very similar. About 3.5 million units that are expected to come out. There's about 9 OEMs that are represented, and there's about 19 major model builds. So next year still has a pretty good cadence to it. One thing that we're being cautious on as well in the automotive industry is when you compare 2020 to 2021, this is where you're starting to see the plan is not out there. Some of the cadence of the vehicles are not turning over, and you're seeing a pretty good shift. In 2021, there's only right now communicated to the marketplace 3 OEMs that are going to have major model launches, and we're expecting to be at least 1 million to 1.5 million vehicle units down in 2021 compared to 20. All right, so that kind of sets the stage of what's kind of happening in the current state today. Now let's shift forward and talk about the disruptors and things that are happening in the marketplace. So connected vehicles, okay? What does that mean? When you get into your vehicles today and in the future, you're seeing more dynamics within the vehicle itself. So you're going to see a lot of trends towards how does the consumer, tap into different things that they need to do when they're in their vehicles. So let me walk you through that. Mobility. Okay, so there's a lot of talks around that. It's kind of a smaller graph for you guys to see that, but there's a lot of different people that are talking about it, and it's not tomorrow, and it's not in the next 5 years or 8 years, but they're talking more like a 2020, 2025 type situation. So it's coming, and I'll give you some examples. So Zox is a pilot automotive startup out there right now, and they're actually looking at the San Francisco marketplace, and they're trying to fully integrate. They want to build the vehicle, they want to sell the vehicle into a fleet that they're going to own, and then they want to manage that. So they want to be fully integrated. So the future in San Francisco in the next maybe 5-10 years, you might be getting in one of their vehicles as a rideshare taxi. Okay, there will not be a driver. You're going to have 4 people, so the compartment's going to be much larger. There's going to be more, areas for entertainment and being able to catch up on things as you're going through the city. Okay, so again, how does that connect to packaging? There's definitely an increase in the specialization of automotive options. So the future is going to be, you still are going to drive the car you're driving on a daily basis on the weekends, and then there's going to be ride-shared vehicles and autonomous vehicles. So the OEMs are going to have multiple different options, and that is going to drive a lot of complexity into the supply chain. So you need standardization, but you also need to envelop into that the way to deal with the flexibilities. So how do you do that? One form of doing that, which isn't new, is part kitting. So this is an example of how you take a standardized tote that goes through the supply chain, yet if I have 10 vehicles going down the assembly line and every other one or every third one is going to be different or unique, I can't have a whole pallet full of the same SKU sitting there, right? Otherwise your inventories are going to go way up, you're going to have cash issues, and you're going to have space issues within your supply chain, right? So then what do? You push backwards into your supply chain, into your tier suppliers, and you start kitting. So you need to bring exactly what you need at the right time, but this is a great example of you don't have to step away from standardization. You want to have a level of standardization in your packaging, but then internally be able to get specialized and be able to bring to the line what they need at any particular moment. Another thing that's happening is automotive companies are starting to see that if you look down at the bottom here, by 2030, they're estimating that $4 trillion is going to be associated with the actual sale of the vehicles that you're buying today. Okay, they're also estimating that by that point in time, $1.5 trillion is going to be associated with services. Okay, so think of GM and OnStar, right? Publications, different things you're going to be buying. What the automotive industry is going to want to be doing is looking at the recurring revenues from their services, right? You sell the car once, yeah, you come back in, you got a dealership thing going on and you're servicing it. But the services and the monthly fees are going to be really the game changer for them from a margin standpoint, from a longevity standpoint, to be able to reinvest into their company. What does that mean for us in the packaging industry? Well, the content within the cars is going to continue to change. The two screens that I'm showing you here, and they have a really nice website, is Lucid Motors. So think of Lucid as kind of like the premium Tesla. It's going to be an all-electric. They're launching at the end of next year. And the content of their vehicles are starting to look like a high-end jet, right? Even in the front seat, you're going to have screens and different content that you're going to be working on. The back seats, they actually have a version where they lay back and you can, there's a screen on top. So it's all going to be about getting you from, automotive usually wanted you to have your eyes on the road and be safe. You're going to see it more and more shifting away from that and trying to get your attention into the inside of the car and spending your time, which is valuable, to do all the things that you need to do when you have downtime, right? I always said, some colleagues that travel, right? A lot of us travel, we're jumping on planes and stuff like that. I could go jump in a car and maybe not spend as much time, but it's downtime for me. I can't deal with that. I need to go through the airports and all the stuff that we all do and jump on the planes because you have that downtime effect. So this will actually start changing how people are going to be traveling as well. Okay. So again, how do we tie this back into packaging? So the connected services are going to be going up. So the interiors of the vehicles are going to be more dynamic. You're going to see more technology components and more part-sensitive components. So you're going to be needing to invest in more protective packaging. Okay, that's really where the trend is going to be going, right? So the days of having a big radio and it's got a lot of electrical metal components on it and it's really protected, you're going to start shipping screens, and that's going to be a differentiator. They're going to need sensitivity, protection, and housing. So that's really, if you're talking to printable packaging companies, definitely make sure that they have the capability to take care of that specialization for you. So I'm going to take you just a real quick history lesson on electric vehicles, right? So most people, when you think of an electric car, what do you think of? Like an all-electric car, doesn't have a gas engine, right? That's what most people think of. So back in '97 is really when hybrids started out. Then we kind of progressed through 2010, 2012 is when Tesla came out with their first vehicle, which, doesn't seem like too long ago. 2020, this is the first truck in the industry. Rivian Motors is actually going to be launching at the end of the year out of Illinois, their line of truck and actually SUV. You might have even seen it in the publications, Shep Bezos also is invested in this company, and he said that he's given them 100,000 vehicles for delivery vehicles. So at some point in time, you're going to have a Amazon vehicle, all electric, that's going to be coming and delivering your packaging. So it's coming, it's already here. What does that mean for the packaging industry? So I always love to educate people a little bit on electrification of vehicles. Really, to me, there's two different focuses that you want to look at when you get down into the supply chain and you look at packaging. The first one is the powertrain, okay? So you're literally going from what they call it as an ICE engine, internal combustion engine, into more of an electric type engine. And you can have many different forms. You can have a battery that runs it off that. You can have hydrogen. But in the end of the day, it's a much simpler situation. So if you look here, in the Lucid motors, if you remember, they have a lot of space inside their car and everything. It's because they don't need all that big drivetrains. They have engines or motors, and a lot of them will start putting the motors on the wheels. So you might not even have to have that big compartment in the front of the car, okay? So it means there's more dynamics within the car. Focusing on powertrain, it's gonna change. So the days of having a very large engine, right? The eight cylinders are going down to 6 cylinders, or going down to 4 cylinders with turbos on them. They're becoming less complex, and they're becoming less components. So there's a couple different things where maybe in the past, somebody was putting an engine on a big rack. Maybe in the future is you're taking it and you're subdividing the smaller electric engines and you're putting them into more of a standardized, maybe returnable plastic container, okay? So that's where innovation can come about. Another area of focus, or the second area of focus on electrification of vehicles, is the internal vehicle itself. So again, all the screens. How many people here had a car where you rolled down your window by your hand? Okay, right? They're not there anymore, right? You know, it's all electrified. You got screens that, you know, you get in a vehicle and you're like, where's the screen? How do I back up the car? You know, it's like you got a mirror, you look behind you, right? But, right, you have the screens in the cars, you have sensors, right? You back up, you hear a beep, right? You drive in the car in, when do I know to stop? You get a beep. So the sensors are becoming more dynamic within the car. Everything in the car is becoming more dynamic. So it's requiring a higher level of protection. And the last thing that's happening is power management. So batteries are becoming a big buzzword out there, right? How many people have heard of lithium-ion? Okay, so this is the traditional lead-based acid battery, the normal battery that you have up by your engine. Sometimes they put it behind the seats. It's usually a certain size. It's not very flexible, very heavy type component. What the industry is transitioning to is lithium-ion, and I would say the next thing after lithium-ion is going to be solid state. The cost structure is going to be there. Lithium-ion does have some hazardous material type situations to it, but the far left it looks like a C-type battery. So if you looked at like Tesla makes thousands of those, and what they do is they put them into the third, kind of the middle picture is a module. So they'll stack a bunch of them up, put them in a module, and they'll put about 15 or 16 modules together into a big plate that goes up under the car, okay? So that's the battery packs they have. So how do we package that? How do we package that as industry professionals? And then also the other thing that's starting to be talked about is, remember back to your vehicle, you have a lot of different things you need to electrify. The wire harnesses are becoming very significant within cars. And there's going to be a shift change where you're going to start seeing having battery sources closer to, you know, where it's going to be consumed, and it'll actually be used to kind of weigh out the vehicle and be able to put weight where you need to. So again, how do we as packaging industry professionals work with that and come up with customized packaging for that? So here's 3 different examples within packaging of how to deal with this disruption. So we know that components are becoming more sensitive, right? So definitely either yourself in your own company or partner with somebody that knows ESD, knows about sensitivity of parts, and can give you that level of service to work with you, because it is going to be different depending on what the part is. Another thing is, if you're in the powertrain industry or you're looking to get in the powertrain industry, is you are going to see packaging changing. You're going to see innovations happening. You're going to see engines being transported differently. You're going to see transmissions packaged differently. This is a concept of a bulk container that maybe in the past, again, that engine was transported in a big metal rack. Now maybe that's going to house 4 engines. or 5 engines or 6 engines, and you have to have that automation to be able to go in and pick the parts out of it. So again, those are the changes and the challenges that as industry professionals we need to work and bring new solutions to the marketplace. And then the last would be again on the batteries. So there are companies, part of the RPA, that are certified that can work with you on lithium-ion batteries. There is some testing, there are a lot of mandates around this. It is very hard to put lithium batteries on aircrafts. A lot of them won't even do it in cargo anymore when you have consumers on the planes, and a lot of the lithium does come from overseas. So you have that, you need to get it into the US, but then even at that point in time, come up with packaging that is certified. So every time you come up with a new battery, so on the bottom here, there's these are 48 volt batteries as a program. Every time you change that battery and that configuration of that battery to get it certified, you have to go back in and get it recertified. So there are member companies here that do that, and will do that as a service. So if you go to them and work with them and purchase their packaging, they will support you on that type of certification, and then you don't have to worry about anything, and it's all done for you. Okay, so my suggestion to you, if you're in the packaging or if you're on the customer side, is talk, collaborate, and make sure that you have companies that can do that for you, because you guys don't need to be experts in battery packaging. Let the experts do that. And then the last slide I have is around intelligent packaging. Okay, so in the food type industry, intelligent packaging is probably known as, I've got a package of something type of food, I'm going to scan it and I can keep tracking it to it. In the automotive industry, it's more really around the visibility within the supply chain. So I just got back from an automotive supply chain conference in Detroit last week, and the OEMs and the tier suppliers and the 3PLs, so the people that are doing the transportation, are now starting to talking about sharing routes, sharing cross docks. There's estimates out there through the US government, you can find them if you search, that there's 25% of trucks on the road that are empty. Okay, so as supply chain experts, we need to use that as an opportunity. How do we drive standardization? How do we drive increase in visibility in what's going through the supply chain, so we can start leveraging that and drive those costs out of the system? So what does it do? And in the end of the day, it highlights risks. And if you do it well, if you look at your data and you analyze the data and you do something about the data, there's a lot of people out there that are capturing data, which is good, that's the first step. Then you need to analyze it, which is very important. But the last step a lot of people that are not doing is, then what are you going to do? You have to have action, right? You have to have feet on the street to be able to do something about that. And you want to build artificial intelligence into your systems. You want them to learn, and you want to not repeat the same thing over and over again. So it also gives ETA predictability, part tracking, and capacity utilization can be optimized. Toyota is one of the biggest OEMs right now that is doing this, and they are now up to, they're going to be taking 100% of their returnable assets moving forward. So they're tracking their plant, they're tracking their tier supplier, they're tracking the container itself, they're tracking the part that goes in the container, and they're also tracking the dunnage. So at any point in time, they can look at their supply chain and understand where things are at, predict things, and start driving efficiencies. So when you do that, there isn't one silver bullet, right? The most important thing that I can give to you about intelligent packaging is you need to understand what you want to get out of it and what your infrastructure is. And again, the infrastructure will continue to change, right? It's becoming more dynamic. You can do this today with barcodes. You can have a barcode reader. Industry people have been doing it forever, barcodes. Then the next step is you can jump up another step and do RFID. So instead of hitting one asset, you can use the radio frequency to be more efficient and capture multiple assets at one point in time, right? Then you can step up again and maybe do Bluetooth, right? So maybe your truck driver is now using his company phone, and that is telling him what is on that truck, what just got loaded on that truck. And now that phone is talking right to the network, and now your logistic people are looking and saying, hey, I know what's on that truck, right? In the past, they knew that maybe that asset or parts left, but they didn't really know where it was. And is it showing up? Is it not showing up? What's really on that truck, right? It's always a surprise. And then what's happening today is also GPS, right? GPS probably is one of the more expensive types of tracking packaging, but it is definitely being used today from an audit standpoint. I have an issue, I have some preliminary data that tells me I have an issue someplace. I'm going to put some GPS on this and really understand exactly what's happening, and then pull it off, and then you can maybe move back to an RFID program. So hopefully that was very valuable for you guys today. Give you a little bit of insight on some disruptive things that are happening in the automotive industry, and kind of tying it a little bit back to, okay, what do we do about it? And together, there has to be collaboration to help address these issues and solve these issues for ourselves as suppliers or OEMs, and then also as well as packaging professionals.